Welcome to the History Nerds United podcast. I'm your head nerd, Brendan. Thank you for being here. This is part 2. Do not skip ahead. Do not skip the intro. Hold on. Wait. This is part 2 of our interview with Anna Akbari on her book, There Is No Ethan. If you didn't listen to part 1, the non-spoiler section, please go back and do that. Read the book before you get to this. We're going to spoil the heck out of everything. We're going to tell you who Ethan is. Actual name, occupation, whole 9 yards. We're going to talk to Anna about Ethan. Seriously, don't ruin the book for yourself. If you're like, I'm going to listen anyway, fine. Trust me, you'll still go back and read the book and really enjoy it. But fair warning, we're about to spoil the hell out of it. Let's talk to Anna. All right, Anna, thanks for coming back. We really just paused for about 10 seconds, but now let's get into the spoiler for There Is No Ethan, okay? You were catfished. You figured out who Ethan was. What's Ethan's real name?
Ethan's real name is Emily Slutsky.
Now, very interesting because before I even finished the book, of course, I started Googling. Emily is out there.
She is.
Oh, I'm sorry. Dr. Emily Slutsky, which is horrifying to think about. I'll also tell the listeners, it seems that she uses 2 different spellings of her last name, depending on where she is. She will change out the Z to an S in her last name.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if that's on purpose or, maybe she's trying to get ahead of a book and an article that's been written about her. When you realized that Ethan was actually Emily.
Yeah.
Did you believe it at first? Or was it, there's no way this can be the truth?
No, and it's interesting because British Anna and I were so certain that this could not be a woman because the way that and you read this, the way that Ethan presented himself was so masculine. It was so man. And there were all these kind of, he was definitely a hypersexual person. Now, none of us were having sex with Ethan, but, there were conversations about his sexual appetite, certainly. And it just, at no point did Anna and I think that it could be a woman, but Gina had considered this. And I think if she hadn't pressed that, it would have taken us a lot longer to figure out who Ethan was.
It had to feel like a double betrayal, right? Like that this person is lying to you, but then also to just call it out, that another woman would do this to another woman. I'd have to think that felt even worse, if that's even possible.
It weirdly did for all of us. And it made it that much more confusing, where you just think, why? Why is does she hate us? Does she want to be us? Was she attracted to us? All of these potential scenarios going through our heads, it was so confusing. And, her explanation, as she states, it was just that since she was already a woman, she wanted to create someone who was completely different from her in a man. As far as we know, she never targeted men as victims. So the motivations, I think this is a question that a lot of people have is why? And it certainly was our biggest question. And it's one that in any interactions we had with her, we tried to press that. Of course, someone who does something like this, do you believe everything that they say to you? So you're not getting a really reliable source there. But her explanation was always, that it was first boredom and then a type of addiction.
I wanted to really honestly fight her. I'm just going to say that because the answers to any of these questions that you go, why the hell would you do this? What were you thinking? All of that stuff, she never really answered. She really thought this was kind of your fault and British Anna's fault and Gina's fault. And, oh, wait, let me just ask, how many women do you know for a fact she did this to?
When the article came out, we had identified around, I want to say, were there 13, something like that, around a dozen that she'd mentioned names, right? She liked to mix fact and fiction. And, at times she would even send a mass email with a bunch of the women's names openly CC'd, which is so bold. She would CC her victims, which, just amazing, the hubris that you're working with here. And so we thought, well, okay, we don't know which of these people are real, which are anyone no one could actually be a friend of Ethan, right? So it all had to be people that somehow, we didn't know the depths of this web of Ethan, but we had kept sort of a spreadsheet of that over the years from when we found out to when I wrote the article. And then part of the motivation in writing the article was that so we had something kind of formal and official to go to these women with and say, look, this happened to us. I don't know if this happened to you. We think you know this person. And so in total, there are 10 of us that we've confirmed. And those are just the ones that we know. Several of the ones that were on our list never responded, but we don't know what that means. Keep in mind that 2 years after we initially outed her, she was still doing it. And then she said she stopped. And then another year later, when the article came out, she was still, we confirmed at least one of the people that was on our list. She was still doing it as of that day when the article came out. So you have to wonder how many, I don't know how many more there are, but we do know there are at least 10.
You have to give her credit for at least probably not sleeping very much, because when she was talking to people that you know, including yourself, she's in medical school. At the same time, you at the very least, pencil her in for 3 to 4 hours worth of talking with you. Then another 3 or 4 talking to somebody else and talking to somebody else.
Or all night.
All night.
Or all night.
And she's in medical school at the same time in Ireland. And I think it's important that we point out, as far as we know, she is actively an OBGYN in New Jersey as we speak.
Yes.
I know a lot of people are going to ask, well, didn't you try and report her?
We did. Gina and Anna and I, we took this really seriously. We thought, would we want this to be our physician? Would we want someone we love going to someone like this? Let's let her school decide if she is violating the Hippocratic Oath. Certainly this would have to be a conflict of interest here. So, we contacted them, and they didn't seem to like it, but they also didn't take any real disciplinary actions that had any significant. I mean, she still graduated, right? She still got her medical license. Then later, there were people who reached out to me when she was at her residency program in the US, and they were expressing concern, but also saying, I don't want to say anything. I'm at a precarious place in my career. People were afraid of her, to be honest. And so once again, we reached out to the people that we think were the program directors there and shared what, we could. We never heard back. We'd reached out to her sister, because we thought, okay, a family member maybe could help her. Her sister's the closest peer. Maybe that would be the right approach. Again, when we were still trying to get her some help and just make sure she didn't do this to anyone else. So we tried reporting it. We made her confess to the guy whose photos she was using. We tried to be as thorough as possible, but along the way, nothing seemed to deter her actions.
I mean, that really takes it into a different stratosphere. Like you said, she's a doctor. She has patients. She has people who trust her. If she wasn't a doctor, you probably would do a lot less than you did, but I think it makes it urgent to put her name out there. I mean, that's why we decided to do kind of a second spoiler episode, because we want you to read the book, but at the same time, people need to know, this person is out there. This person has patients who are relying on her. And, we don't know if she's still spending 8 hours a night instead of studying her medical books and looking at charts. She may be pretending to be a guy and trying to get a woman to fall in love with her.
And legally, I can't speculate as to what her current activities are. You can speculate. I cannot. All I can say is I don't trust her. I will say also, I know one of the other victims that we identified who's also a physician and was horrified that Ethan was actually a doctor. Emily was working at the NIH at the time. And I know that this person sent a letter to them. But again, I think she sent an anonymous letter because she was also afraid that somehow it would get back to her. I mean, the level of fear that she has, instilled in so many of both her catfish victims, but also these other individuals. I mean, they recognize that something is off and they're concerned, but then no one really wants to take any action. So that's part of the reason that I really felt this book needed to be written. Like, it just needs to be out there so that there's no question about it.
Now, you and I are a month out from publication. When this comes out, it will be when the book is published. But have you gotten anything from Emily's lawyers? Is she trying to shut this book down? Are you allowed to tell me just blink twice?
So I can say, which I state in the book, that once the book was listed online as for sale from my publisher and on the retailer sites, she must have either had some kind of a Google alert, either on my name or on Ethan's name. I don't know which is creepier, but one of those, and had her lawyer send a letter to my publisher discouraging them from publishing it, but knowing sort of nothing about what was actually in the book, and wanted to make clear in the letter that this was in her past and that she's no longer doing this. So that was the last that I didn't hear from her directly, that, we've heard from her from my publisher, and clearly they were unfazed by that, because everything in this book is true and it's our collective story as the victims to tell. And I will not speculate on her current actions.
I think I'm allowed to. We don't have a lawyer to check, but
you absolutely can. I can't, but you absolutely can.
Well, I think something that has come up is I've talked to other people about this. I've already told you I'm crazy for this book. I've had other people read it already. They loved it too. What really becomes hard to discuss, because you don't want to be flippant about this, but she didn't commit a crime as far as we know. And that's where this all gets kind of funny, right? Because I think everyone can agree what she did was wrong. I don't think a person in their right mind would think what she did was okay in any way, shape, or form. But at the same time, I can't think of how you could write a law to make what she did a crime. It's just you can't legislate lying unless there's, as you said, she didn't want sex, she didn't want money. And if you're not taking those two things from people by deceit, then what is she doing except wasting your time?
I mean, you have potentially, from a legal argument, especially with several of the victims, you have kind of emotional distress. That would definitely be, you had people who were failing a year of grad school because of the constant harassment. You had people who were risking sort of losing their jobs, who are experiencing very serious kind of physical ailments due to the distress that they were under because of her. So those individuals would potentially have some kind of a case, albeit a bit of an unusual one. So from that perspective, legally, no. Then you get to the question of being a physician and, what would the medical board have to say about this? I don't know. I mean, I have seen lots of things about how there are people who go to jail and still keep their medical license. I mean, I think it's harder than you think it would be.
It's very hard, actually.
Yeah. And I believe we have a bit of a shortage in the US for OBGYNs. So their skills are definitely needed. It raises interesting philosophical questions. Can you be a good physician and also someone who, whether or not they're still doing it, again, I can't say, but for a very long time, for over at least a decade, was engaging in this behavior? Because she started in high school. And we know that at least one of the people, I think it was something like, I think they'd been in communication for around 9 years when the article came out. I mean, that's a tremendously long time. This was not, I'm having a bad day and I'm going to, pretend to be someone else. So can we separate who we are in that way? Can you show up and be a good doctor and then be this other person in your off time? Is one not a reflection of the other? I don't know.
The scariest aspect of this story is that after it all came out, Emily, through her own words, felt that her and British Anna should still be friends, should still be best friends. because of what they went through together.
Yes.
And I think, and it sounds strange, that's the scariest part of it to me, that this person is doing something evil and does not think it's evil, sees no reason to stop. As far as you know, she may have said it, but never sought actual therapy for this. In fact, I believe she asked one of her victims to be her therapist.
She did.
Now, once again, for somebody who is not a medical doctor, that's still a dumb-ass question. For somebody who is a doctor, that's an especially dumb-ass question, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, poor British Anna, it was so heartbreaking in the aftermath of us revealing who Ethan really was to witness the complex emotions that she had. I mean, she very much had Stockholm syndrome, I mean, she felt this connection to the person animating Ethan, even though she was horrified and angry. And so for her, I mean, she likened it to kind of an abusive parent, that's how it felt for her, where it's like you still want that connection, but you also know that they're really horrible to you. And so it took her a long time to unravel her emotions around that. And, both Gina and I were concerned about that. And of course, Gina had been engaged to someone who, I can't pathologize him, but who wasn't the best guy, who was prone to lying. And, Emily knew this and preyed on it. I mean, that's the thing, like finding the victim's weak points and preying on it.
I'm going to assume that Emily still has that Google alert up. If she was listening right now, what would you want to say to her?
I would say that she should consider apologizing to everyone, and maybe explaining her actions and just never, ever doing this again to anyone. I think those are the things that everyone would want. No one's really gotten a valid explanation. No one ever felt confident what was or wasn't happening, after the fact. So it's one thing to be betrayed, and then to still have all these kind of lingering questions, it's maddening. So, as I say at the end of the book, she had the power to walk away. And yet when we confronted her on this, she merely said to us, it's your fault. You could have walked away at any point, as if it were really that simple, as if Ethan would have ever let any of us. I mean, one of the victims, I think Emily created something like 9 different email addresses. Every time this woman would block her, she would just create a new one. So, to just say we could all just walk away, it's gaslighting, right? Like that's really what she was so masterful at doing. And so I think everyone would appreciate a level of accountability and honesty. But then you have to ask, is someone who does something like this, are they capable of those things? I don't know.
It just seemed like there's no ability to do that. No ability, no willingness. And I personally, I would like to see the therapy receipts because, first of all, she's already caused a lot of other people to spend a lot of money on therapy. The very least she can do is some intensive time with a therapist.
And I think a brilliant scientific mind like that, in my opinion, is better suited for research than working with humans.
Now, I want to bring up something, and I want to be very clear about this. I think this is a compliment.
Okay.
When this all went down and Emily was unmasked, you turned into her villain.
I did.
And it was amazing. British Anna was, oh, no, like we're still friends. I'm actually kind of sorry what happened with you and we can still be friends. And Gina was kind of in the middle, but you especially, she turned on you hardcore. How do you feel about that now, knowing that this person who clearly has some issues looked at you and said she was scared of you?
Yeah.
That's got to feel at least a little bit good under the circumstances.
It makes you think about things and it brings up your own insecurities. So on the one hand, I think she recognized, my fierceness, right? That I can be formidable, that I will protect people I love, that I will fight for justice. These are things I'm really proud of. But then when you think about it, this was the masterful thing that she could do as Ethan, is you think, oh, well, am I giving off those vibes in my personal relationships? Am I scary? Do people fear me? You don't want that in your everyday relationships. I definitely, in her case, it's the former. But then if you're human, I think, and you aim to have close personal relationships, you also would think, oh, am I scary? You self-reflect a little bit on that.
No, Emily, you can't take credit for that, just in case. Listen, Anna, British Anna, Gina, you're absolute badasses. Thank you for especially being that vulnerable, and hopefully that the people that we talked about, all of them, but especially one person, gets the hope that they need. And thank you so much for sharing this.
Thank you for having me.
And that's it for this episode. Anna, thank you so much once again. There is no Ethan. Trust me, people, everyone's going to be talking about this book. It is insane and awesome. Go get it. Hit us up, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Check on YouTube, please. Just give Mike Barnett a shout out for the great work he's doing on our YouTube channel. Other than that, until next time, nerds, stay cool.
History Nerds United.